Hello, lads, and welcome back. I hope we're all doing okay, and we've had a great weekend. It was certainly a cold one. Jason, who's your next game up against, and how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, so didn't have the greatest result last night, pretty undeserved. But next game we've got Cambridge at the weekend. Pretty confident about that one. And we're playing well, so we believe in ourselves. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Good stuff. Wish you the best of luck, and we'll look forward to hearing from you and how that goes in the next podcast.
Cheers.
So Lewis, comfortably into semester 2 now, mate. How's your dissertation coming along?
Yeah, it's not going too bad, thank you, mate. Yeah, I'm on track with the little guideline I've set myself, so it's going well.
Good stuff, mate. Good stuff.
How about you?
Yeah, same really. It's just a lot of literature reading.
It is.
But framework's all there now, so just cracking on with it, really.
Good stuff.
Go on then, Luke. How was your weekend, mate?
I had a chilled weekend, to be fair, kind of making the most of it being half term. We didn't have too much work over the weekend, but watched a bit of football, mainly the Forest match. Decent draw against Bournemouth, as I'm a Forest fan. So yeah, that's all I did for my weekend, to be honest.
Good stuff, mate. Good stuff. And John Joe, did you manage to watch any of the Six Nations, mate, at the weekend?
Yeah, pretty much all of the games. Obviously there was the England game against Italy, which I think it was much needed to play Italy, which is no disrespect against Italy, but considering what happened in the first game against Scotland, I think it was just a bit of a morale booster for the rest of the country, and especially for the team as well. But no, it was a pretty good game, to be fair.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that Scotland game was a bit of a shock, wasn't it? But Italy, no, like you said, no disrespect, but it was a much needed win after the Scotland game. So yeah, glad to hear that you're doing well. So firstly, I'd like to thank the listeners again for tuning back in to episode 3. This week we're going to be looking into are elite sports clubs offering enough support to release academy players. And I mean, this came to our attention because of an article that was wrote by Sam Cunningham. And there was an interesting stat that highlighted 98% of players who become full-time scholars aged 16 will be released or have dropped out of football entirely by the age of 21. So just before we start, there will be helplines available at the end of this podcast if you are needing to seek help. But Jason, as going through this process yourself, tell us how difficult it is to make that transition into a fully fledged pro.
Yeah, so it can definitely be a difficult transition, you go from sort of like youth team, which is like 16 to 18. You basically become like mates with all the lads your age. So like you're all the similar age. It's like you build quite a good bond with some of the lads. And it's certainly a very different environment to the first team one. Whereas lads of like all different ages. And it can be a difficult transition, when you first step in, you can't seem to be too arrogant or too cocky, but then you don't want to come across as too timid. You want to like express yourself. So it can be difficult in that manner. Also, it can be a pretty ruthless environment. If you're not doing well in training as a young lad, then it can be tough. It can be tough to you got to train well pretty much every day to stay in there and gain the respect of the fellow pros as well. And you have got hope that luckily some of the older pros at the clubs you're at when you're a young lad are like quite welcoming and receiving, and you've got hope that they'll like help you along your journey. Fortunately, like the club I'm at, there was some really good older pros who really helped and supported me along the way. So it unless you're in, you've got the right environment, it can be a difficult transition, but it's certainly one of them where you sort of like expected just to really get on with it and fit in, and that's the main aim really, from stepping up from the youth team to the first team.
Yeah, cheers for opening up about that, mate. Lewis, with it being so difficult and so few making it through as a full-time pro, what are elite clubs doing to support those that aren't as fortunate and do get dropped?
Yeah, so I know we've all come through like academies which aren't obviously like out of nowhere, and we've like most academies, sorry, they offer some sort of education courses, so that'd be like BTECs and stuff like that. But one thing that I did read up on is that obviously if you're in a football academy, for example, the courses that would be available are basically evolving around football itself and sport. So there was a story about a player who got released, and basically he wasn't happy doing the courses he was at. I think he was doing a BTEC in sport or something. But when he got released, he went into forensic science, and in the interview he said that obviously that's a better opportunity for him to pursue like his career. So I think they're offering education, but it's very limited compared to another education provider, like a different college, for example. So the courses that they're doing they are doing courses, for example, but it's quite limited. So additionally, when players get released or are in that process of having to release players, some academies offer support sessions for the players that are going to get released. So this would like help them get prepared to what they're going to do after. And even in some cases, they set up some trials for the players to do at other clubs. So like give them a second chance.
Yeah, so you're obviously talking about how they do offer some support, but do you reckon there can be anything further that can be done in the future to maximise this process?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about the different courses that they could do, but it is limited, obviously, with being an academy. So they would only be able to offer a certain amount. But I think it's important to make sure that offer for education is like available for everyone, and everyone's having to do some sort of education alongside their time at the academy. Along with that, I think having some support sessions would be very like necessary for those young players who are getting released at like ages 16 to 17. So I think having some players not having that opportunity, it does affect them really bad. And like we've heard the stories about the players who have been left with nothing, no support. So I think that's what they're missing. It's like giving every player the same chance as everyone else.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's important that clubs ensure that they offer this plan B. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the plan B starts also with like talking parents and their child about what they're going to get out of their time there, because obviously, as you said, it is very hard to make it full time professionally. So I think being able to talk about opportunities that could lead on from taking part in these education courses would help get that plan B. And also, I think I'm not sure if this is right saying it, but I think having these education classes and support like meetings, if they could be implemented in their contracts, so that like both the athlete has to like go up to them and the academy has to like put them on, for example, I think that would make a big change in like ensuring everyone's got the same support available.
Yeah, I think that's really important with what you mentioned there, Lewis. How players and parents they should prepare for plan B. In case the pro contract doesn't come, and the stats speak for themselves in terms of it is a very slim chance that will happen. I mean, going back to yourself, Jason. Obviously, I understand that, like all of us, we're taking a BSc Sport Science degree, but taking yourself back to that 16-year-old lad, did you ever consider a backup career option than becoming a professional athlete?
Yeah, so I was quite lucky. I was always good academically at school, and at 16. I was buzzing. You know what I mean? Like, thinking of like playing football full time. That's all I've ever really wanted to do. And I think the main support I got was from my dad. He was adamant that he kept my feet on the ground, as in he made me realise like the actual chances of actually making it are slim. And even if you do make it, you never know how long your career could be. You like one really bad injury could end your career pretty quickly, and then if you haven't got a backup plan, then like you don't know what you're going to be doing. Do you know what I mean? So he was always like, he was adamant really that I continue with my education, and I wanted to be honest, just have that backup plan. So luckily, like with the help of Mansfield, I was able to get on the BTEC diploma for sport, and then they helped me get onto the degree that we're doing now. So I think it's really important that you do have a backup plan, not only like even for after football, just for later life. Just have that something behind you that you can fall back on for any circumstances in sport or like a professional setting where your career could come into an end early. Or so yeah, I say my dad was really important in that, and making me realise that I always need that plan B. And I was happy really, to continue my education at the minute. I'm not saying it's easy doing both at the same time, but yeah, I'm certainly glad I'm doing it.
Yeah, thanks for that insight, mate. I mean, credit to you and your dad. Certainly the individual can take responsibility for setting up that plan B, but I mean, it should be enforced by the sport team as well. You touched on Mansfield giving you the opportunity of the degree course here, but I mean, as well as giving them opportunities to potential work experience, such as coaching, strength and conditioning, physiotherapy, or like we've touched on, opening up to a potential university degree that may interest them. To minimise this risk of players almost feeling at a loose end if they are released by the club. I mean, Luke, maybe you'd like to add on to, I guess, not preparing for the after and how that can affect a player going forward.
Yeah, so just to start, I'm just going to talk a little bit about ugly parent syndrome, which can definitely make it a lot harder and worse for a young player. So obviously, if a player is suffering from parents that do have ugly parent syndrome, the parents could become too eager and too pushy for their child to make it in their chosen sport, which could lead to them not thinking about the future or consequences if they do not actually make it. They may be unaware of the true stats of the percentages of players that do not actually become pro. So that kind of leads nicely into my next point, that some parents don't sit down with their child and have a brutally honest talk. They kind of let them get ahead of themselves and think, I'm going to be pro. I mean, they've just got offered a scholarship and they're thinking 2 years time, I'll be a professional footballer. I could be playing for the first team. But like I said, they do need to have that brutally honest talk saying how they might not make it, and that they do in fact need to have a backup option. So they, like Lewis has kind of said, they do need to reinforce that they do have a plan B as such. They just kind of need to have a conversation just to allow them to prepare for their future. Furthermore, going on to coaches also need to communicate thoroughly with the parents and the player upon what they're being offered in their contract. In terms of, like Lewis said, the coaches need to encourage that the athletes take part in education alongside the sport, whether this be inside the club or off-site. So say the club doesn't offer, like Jason has done, a BTEC course, then they could do A levels somewhere else as such. But yeah, like I said, it's just the plan B, and it's Yeah, I think it's good that Jason and his dad kind of thought to themselves that they do need to do something to prepare for the next step. Because as he said, he did the BTEC alongside doing like playing with the youth team and the first team, and he's now doing a degree to allow himself to have something after. Obviously, if he does not make it, carrying on, he doesn't get offered a new contract as such. So yeah, I think they're just a few options that can be thought about before and what need to be done in professional teams.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think you got the two sides there of, obviously, you speak about ugly parent syndrome, sort of the parents not having that chat. But in Jason's case, you know, his dad did have that chat with him, and he is taking a course, and he does have that plan B if anything was to go bad. I mean, do you have any examples of any players who suffer with depression post being released?
Yeah, sadly, there's several cases of this, probably worldwide, but there's a lot in England. Several cases where young footballers have been found dead shortly after being released from academies. To give a few examples, there's a lad called Jeremy Whiston, where he was released from Manchester City's academy and was found dead not too long after. And an inquest was placed into Manchester City on the support that they gave him. Was it enough as such? And a second example was a young player who isn't named, but he had trials at Manchester United, and he had injuries during these trials, and which ultimately led to him killing himself. And an example, a very strong example here, is of Max Noble, who came out and told his story to Sam Cunningham from iNews Sport, from how he was a promising young winger of Fulham and Wales Young International, to how he then became a 19-year-old who would stay in bed all day, crying, suffering from anxiety and depression, which he said is still with him to this day, despite obviously overcoming what he faced. But he stated how he was just a normal lad who enjoyed playing football with friends and would often go out and play football with his dad. But after this, he joined Wimbledon's academy at 8, being handed a 4-year contract. But then 4 years later, at the age of 12, he showed signs of pains in his knees, where he was then diagnosed with Osgood-Schlatter's disease, which is, for obviously those who do not know, is an intense pain when the kneecap is not fully developed and placed under too much pressure. After that, Fulham paid a small fee to sign him, which obviously he was still very young. But at the time, they were managed by Chris Coleman, and they were an established Premier League side with the likes of Danny Murphy and Jimmy Bullard in the first team. And he was often training with the first team. But this was when he was 15, and he was meant to be doing his GCSEs. But the club offered him a scholarship a year early, convincing him to leave school before he'd even taken his GCSEs, with the promise of a professional contract 3 years later. So he left school without even doing his GCSEs and therefore had no qualifications, which kind of ties in where he could have been doing them at the same time, but because he was so eager and the club had promised him a pro contract, he just took it. But see, about his injury, he was advised by the Fulham staff that an operation was not needed to fix the pain because he was young. They said it would heal. But then the medical staff started giving him pain-killing injections before training and matches. Obviously, the pain was unbearable, so they're giving him injections. During his time, he also touched upon how he faced racism towards himself and some of his teammates, who were some of them were black individuals like himself. He spoke about how they had lost 3 or 4 games in a row, and the black lads, the black individuals, were told that it was because of their attitude. And as a result of this, they were told to sit in the changing rooms whilst the other white players could train with the reserves, where they weren't allowed to eat in the canteen with the first team and more of the youth players. They had to eat in the changing rooms after training, with it still being dirty and muddy. So there's just a few things he faced, obviously being in this setup. And yeah, as the promised professional contract was coming closer to reality, he was informed he had severe tendonitis in both knees and required double knee surgery. And Fulham themselves, the club, refused to pay for the treatment, explaining that he was coming to the end of his scholarship deal and would not receive a new one. But obviously, like I said, they promised him a professional contract, which made him leave school, skip his GCSEs. And obviously, he didn't have any education. And then, obviously, after this, he was saying how he had to pay for his own surgery and the rehab of it. Whereas normally, obviously, you would think the club would provide this, give you as much care as possible. He said he didn't even receive a phone call from them to see how he was getting on. He had no psychological help, no aftercare at all, no job opportunities, no internships, no courses. And he was saying how it's like they just say to you, get lost, you're not good enough, see you later. And he was 18 at the time. Obviously, when he left, he was a teenager still, no qualifications and 2 badly injured knees. And he finished in the article by stating that he had depression, anxiety, and all trauma. And all the trauma nearly killed him, basically. But if it wasn't for him reaching out to his parents and such, he got the help that he needed. And now he's actually trying to help more younger players who have suffered things similar to him to become better. So it's kind of goes back to my point earlier with the question you asked about not preparing for the aftermath. It's kind of where the coach needs to talk to them and encourage them to do something rather than lying and saying stuff like, we promised this and stuff like that, basically. So yeah, that's just a bit of insight about some people that have experienced such things.
Yeah, thanks for that. Obviously, an awful story for such a young, promising lad. Obviously, the stats speak for themselves, but I feel when you hear a real life story such as Max's, then it does hit home a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Jason, have you ever experienced or witnessed anything like this?
Yeah, so I was in academies quite throughout most of my childhood, to be honest, and like coming through, I met so many lads. Like you make good mates with quite a lot of them, and you got to think like coming through as a young lad, like, and say you're at like a professional club. That is all you've ever wanted, like to become a professional footballer. And while you're at these professional clubs, you start to believe like I could make it here, like this could be my chance to be a professional footballer. The sad reality is that like as Luke said, like not many lads will actually make it. And I've met a few lads, and like 15, 16, like they get released, even youth team, and this is all like some of these lads, this is all they've ever known and all they've ever wanted. And when they do get released, like it basically brings the world crashing down on them. You feel like you've let your mum and dad down. They've been like ferrying you around, driving you to training all these years, giving you the best opportunities. And then if you're like, as soon as you get released and you're not wanted, you feel like the main thing is like you've let your mum and dad down, and everyone else, your friends, your family, and like, yeah, I know a few lads that have really suffered because of it, being released at a youth team, and they've really struggled. And I do know one case where it's been really severe, and one of the lads has really struggled with like depression, and it's really sad to see, to be honest. Like, and there's prevalence of like such conditions such as like Osgoods, and these clubs like with kids at young ages, they like feed them all these like these beliefs about, oh yeah, we'll sign you now, and we want you to miss school. So like every Tuesday I used to miss school when I was in an academy when I was youngish, like year 10 to 11. So I used to miss school every Tuesday. It's basically called day release, and I know that quite a lot of the clubs are still doing it. And it's like the best thing as a kid when you can say like to your mates, oh, I'm missing school today. I'm going football training. But the sad thing is like you're missing out on your education. And yeah, I think these clubs like they do have a duty of care, because like when they release these lads, it is literally the whole world just crashing down on them. It's all they've ever wanted. And it is really sad in some cases that things like this do happen. So yeah, I'd say it's imperative like all the lads at these clubs, like they should always have a backup plan, and should keep reminding themselves like what if, do you know what I mean? Like just so if like something as awful as that does happen, it's the impact on you is not as much, because it is a ruthless sport in a ruthless environment, and like it's a tough world. So yeah, some really sad cases, and I think these clubs do have like a duty of care. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ITV did a survey just last year, and they found that 88% of released footballers do suffer from anxiety and/or depression, with almost 3/4 believing that there is not enough support given by the club. So, I mean, touching back on your point earlier, Lewis, I think it is so important to make it compulsory for all professional clubs to make that, extra effort and come up with a plan in order to help players understand another journey that isn't in professional football. So, John Joe, I've kept you quiet for a while now. We've obviously heard the football side of events. Maybe you'd like to touch on how the rugby academies are and whether they differ at all to the football sides.
Yeah, good job on keeping me quiet. Normally people can't actually shut me up. But I do know in rugby academies, that's across the Premiership, they do actually get in touch with other clubs, whether that's actually in the Premiership, Championship, or in the National League. So National League is just below the Championship. And they do actually place them with the team. That's whether it's concluding the season or actually in preparation for the new season. So kind of as like a pre-season thing to get them training. So I think that's one massive thing that definitely differs in football, is that they in rugby they do actually take the action to get in touch with other teams. And again, everyone's mentioned about the academic side of things. I know that what I've researched, a lot of rugby academies do actually get in touch with the universities, that if that's their choice, obviously. I mean, I don't know how many players do actually go on to play at university, but they do actually get in touch with all the coaches. So basically they can get familiar with that kind of setup, and again, kind of in that pre-season thing. So I definitely say that's where rugby is quite a bit different to football. In the case that they do actually take action and kind of help their players along the way. I know that wasn't the case.
Like you said, I think it's giving them the opportunity. Like you said, players may not take it up, but it's offering them that university course, that to continue playing, get them into Championship, National One, whatever level it is at, and and keep them playing. But I mean, I believe there is a bit of a stigma still from getting released at a younger level, such as under 16s, which I believe is when you're at the developing player program. Is that the DPP? I believe, John Joe.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you can touch a bit more on that, mate.
Yeah. So essentially, what this stigma is once players were released, they were kind of just written off and told no, basically saying there was no chance of them becoming professionals. And once they had become released, there was very little communication after this deselection phase. And essentially, what happened then was it actually made a lot of players drop out of the game, whether that was completely stopped playing, or just kind of fell out of love with rugby. But I know that's completely changed now. Obviously, with mental health being such a widely known thing nowadays, and it's such an important thing for people. And I think the way that coaches are actually taught nowadays with players, especially for adolescent age groups, it's definitely become a lot better. Although I still think this stigma does exist. They've kind of changed it around. So how I'd mentioned about the players in this deselection phase, they've actually changed the words to not now. So I think that basically just means it gives them a list of options and support available for a player. instead of that kind of point blank, no, you're not going to make it kind of thing. And I think that's a massive thing for especially adolescent lads or players who are kind of in that deselection phase. And again, everyone's mentioned it. It's about this kind of having that plan B. And I think that's a massive thing for these kind of players.
Yeah, I mean, you touch on dropout rates. I mean, ultimately, without any grassroots, there's no professional. I think that's really important. So to keep them dropout rates, as low as they can, and keep them young players in the game, because that is what makes the sport ultimately. But thanks for that insight, lads. Maybe I can give you the opportunity now to open up on a difficult time that you've experienced in a sporting context yourself, but more importantly, how you overcame that.
Yeah, so I'd probably say my most difficult sporting moment was, so as a young lad, I was at Burton Albion Academy probably for about 4 years. So I actually started at Mansfield when I was about, I think it was about 8 or 9. Stayed there for quite a few years, probably about 3, until they actually shut down the academy for a bit. So then signed up for Burton from there, and I was probably there for about 3 or 4 years until I was about, I'd say I was 14, 15. And that was the point where I actually got released. They told me that I wasn't big enough, basically. And at a time like that, it did hit me quite hard. Couldn't really understand it, because I felt like while I was there, I was still one of the better players, and they was literally just saying because of my size, like, that I wasn't going to make it. Which I think, I couldn't at the time. I couldn't fathom it really, and I felt like I'd let my mum and dad down. My dad used to drive me everywhere. I'm from Nottingham, so it's over an hour's drive to training every time I went. Probably went there 2 or 3 times a week. So I felt like I'd let them down. I felt awful, to be honest with you. I thought, I'm never going to make it. Like, I'm not good enough. What am I going to say? What am I going to say to everyone? Fortunately for me, my dad and my mum and dad were the most supportive out of everyone. They said, like, look, Jason, you don't need to worry. Like, you're going to be all right. We still believe in you. You haven't let us down. It's just not fair. That's just how life is sometimes. And that really helped me to overcome it, really. I think more than anything, it actually gave me a bit more motivation to prove people wrong. So I think it could go. I could have gone either one or two ways. I could have given up and just packed it in. I thought it's not for me. I think it did actually give me a bit more motivation just to keep going, really. And I was a pretty late developer, so I did get released at 14, 15, but I was pretty small. But by the time over the next few years, I think I developed quite a lot physically. Definitely got a bit taller. I mean, not that tall now, but I was definitely a lot smaller. And that definitely helped me along the way. I went back to Sunday League for a little bit with a team in Mansfield called Teversall, and I actually fell back in love with football. Really enjoyed it. Playing every week, I was scoring goals, playing with some mates. Loved it, to be honest with you. And I think that just helped me find myself again, really. And from there, I was trialing quite a lot of different places. I still didn't get a scholarship at the time. I trialed at Forest, Derby, and they said, look, we think you're good, but we can't offer you a scholarship. And I was pretty disappointed. But I think from getting released before that, it sort of softened the blow a little bit, as in I was like used to a bit of disappointment, but because it made me a bit mentally stronger. So yeah, I didn't actually get a scholarship anywhere. So I actually signed for a local non-league team. Unfortunately, the next season, so I actually went to sixth form. So I was doing my A-levels. I'm halfway through my first year of my A-levels. I was playing for Carlton Town in non-league, like step 4, and basically I played a few games. The manager there was great with me, Wayne Scott. I can't thank him enough, really. And yeah, he put me in for a few games. I think I scored three goals, 4 games, and there was somebody from Mansfield watching, Richard Cooper, and they were really impressed with me and got me in for training one day at Mansfield, and I had a worldie, to be honest. Probably had the best day of training in my life. And from there I signed, and I can't thank Richard Cooper enough. He's helped me along my whole journey, especially with my education as well. He's always supported me in wanting to carry that on, because in my first year, when I actually did sign for Mansfield, I was still continuing to do my my sixth form. The manager at the time, he was Adam Murray. He allowed me to actually do my sixth form as well, which was like really supportive, and that actually got me the UCAS points, so that when I did do the BTEC diploma, I didn't need to do the full 2 years. I actually only did 1 year of that, and that got me enough UCAS points to get onto the degree. So people along the way I can't thank enough for helping me. But yeah, getting through the darkest moments, especially with like support from family and friends, I think that's what enabled me more than anything. So I can't thank them enough, really. So yeah, although he's not made an appearance today, I'd like to thank Matt's dog, actually. Matt.
He hasn't made an appearance yet, has he?
No. I'm surprised.
Yeah, he's just chilling downstairs, actually.
Surprised, mate. You haven't had the mailman around.
Thanks for that, Jace. That's a real good insight to that. Lewis, do you want to open up about a situation for you, mate?
Yeah, so obviously I'm a bit different to Jason. I was just playing for fun, really, on the weekend, grassroots. But before I get into that, I just want to say, Jason, that's a brilliant background you got there. Not giving up when obviously it must have been hard with like getting released. But obviously, if other people can hear that who have got released, it's not the end. Like, you can carry on and still obviously make it, like you, Jace. I think that's brilliant. But to get into my point, I was playing obviously Sunday League. I was playing in a good team, but I felt like I wasn't like part of the team. I wasn't starting as much as I thought I like wanted to. I wasn't like playing as much as I wanted to either. So obviously going into the games, my enjoyment levels and my confidence level just wasn't there, because I thought I could give a bit more to the team than I was at the minute. But so it took a bit of a toll on like my enjoyment levels actually playing football. But after a while, I thought this ain't changing. So I thought, had a look at where I was at the minute, and I took myself out of that club, and I actually moved into a different league with a team where some of my mates were at the minute. And this playing with my mates, it just got my like enjoyment levels with football back up. So I just enjoying playing a bit more, not getting as like stressed when it comes to match days, just because when I was at the other club, I just thought, if I don't play 100% today, I'm not going to get another chance for a while. So I just mainly playing for fun for me, to be fair. But with that, I just want to like highlight that although you as a player might not fit in in a team and you get released, it's not to say you ain't fit in a different team. You know, everyone's got their own like abilities that they can provide a team, and you just might fit in better elsewhere. So if you're having difficulties enjoying where you're playing, you know, there's no point sticking at it if you're not getting anywhere, if you're not enjoying it. I think that's the main point I wanted to say.
Yeah, so we're just jumping into mine then. Mine's a bit shorter than Jason's, thankfully. I don't want to keep you here for too long, like Jason has. But mine's just, I was captain for the under-21 side at Brugsby in my first year. I was playing every game, and we won a cup and league and the league and stuff like that. I was thinking going into the second year, I'm excited. Hopefully, same thing again. Do you know what I mean? Some new players coming in and stuff like that. Then in this second year, we got a new coach, and I felt I was doing well. Felt I was doing just as well as the season before, but I was hardly playing, and we were losing a lot of games, which obviously makes it worse. You think I can make a difference here, help the team, but I was still kept on the bench, and it was frustrating, and it really killed my confidence. And you kind of thinks like, oh, like, am I being a bit deluded about myself? Am I thinking I'm this when I'm not? But I wasn't overconfident. I was just confident in myself, as you know, you should be. And it was just, yeah, like I said, it was frustrating more than anything. And to overcome this, I kind of just started focusing on myself, training as much as I can, training at home and stuff like that, and just trying to do as much as I can just to feel better about myself. It wasn't such about getting in the team. It was just about myself, getting my confidence back, feeling myself again. And yeah, I achieved that, and that's basically mine. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Matt's dog as well. So
I just thought I'd jump in after you, Luke. Again, shout out to Matt's dog.
He was just barking a minute ago. You just missed him.
Get him on him. Get him on.
So you should have given him an invite. Anyway,
Maybe not.
Yeah, so my experience was with the Leicestershire under-20s county team. And essentially what was happening is I was turning up to training every week, pretty much putting in everything I could to training, and essentially getting picked as a travelling reserve for basically every county game. And I think it got to a point where there was lads who actually hadn't even turned up to training getting picked over me, like even being put on the bench. And what was kind of happening with me in my own head was thinking, like, what's the point of even turning up to training if someone else who isn't actually coming to training being picked? And if I'm honest, it really made me it didn't make me hate rugby, but it made me really fall out with rugby. I mean, it affected my game in my own club as well, and it just put a massive dampener on the whole experience playing rugby. But one way I overcame this was actually just talking to people, and I think everyone's kind of touched on that, is that the people you can talk to are the ones that are most important. I mean, I can't thank Speedo or Stephen Baker enough, because I'd had a conversation with him, and one thing he said was, I think he said, if you think of it this way, when you come into training, you are giving it everything, and it's just going to make you better as a player. I think that's what really kind of cheered me up and pushed me to keep coming to these training sessions, because I just thought, well, it is going to improve my game anyway, so I can't really thank him enough. But again, it's just having those people to talk to around you that can really can make such like an impact on how you feel.
Yeah, cheers for that, John. Just leading on from your point, my experience was when I was a 17-year-old lad, and I was playing for my county, Leicestershire again, but this time it was the under-18s. And during the under-18s, you have 3 grading games, and that's to get selected for the Midlands. So I played all 3 games, and after the 3rd game, the Leicestershire head coach spoke to me, and he's basically said that he spoke to the Midland coaches, and he can't see them how they're not going to select me. And at that point, I was buzzing, you know, and I went home and I told my family, I told my friends the news, that I was going to get selected for the Midlands. But a couple of weeks later, when the selection happened, I got a phone call from the head coach, and I remember it like it was yesterday. It was on a Wednesday night at about 12 o'clock at night, and he basically explained to me that I hadn't made the cut. And in that moment, I guess I felt embarrassed, and I did feel like I let my family down. After I've told him, I've made it, because that's what I was told myself. And being a 17-year-old lad, you hear that, and you don't really think anything else of it. But I guess how I dealt with it was, I spoke to people like many of the lads have touched on here. I spoke to lads that were in a similar position to me, and it made me realise that it wasn't the be all or end all. And as it happened, a year later, I was playing for Leicestershire under-20s, and I was an under-19, so I was it's like a two year. You play county for 2 years, and I was in the first year, and I ended up getting selected for Midlands under-20s, but as a under-19, unfortunately, I had to withdraw from the trial due to an injury. But I think it's realising that it's not the end, and when something doesn't work in your favour, because life will deal you a bad hand every now and then, and it's how you cope with that. It's speaking to the right people, speaking to your closest family members, your closest friends, and picking yourself back up. But yeah, I want to thank the lads for all opening up about them experiences. It can't be easy, but more importantly, how you dealt with them. And I think clubs are starting to become aware of this stigma now, but they are starting to take action. But ultimately, the stats from the ITV survey, like I mentioned earlier, do speak for themselves. And I believe more can be done and needs to be done in the future to tackle these issues. But that's all we have time for today. On behalf of all five of us, I just want to thank the listeners for the feedback over the first two episodes. It really has been overwhelming. So thank you for that. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, there will be helplines at the end of this podcast. So if you are feeling low and want to seek help, be sure to check them out. But thanks again for listening in, and we look forward to bringing you episode 4 next week. In the meantime, take care, everyone. Stay safe, and we will catch you next week.